Guys, we got a great episode today. Thanks for tuning in
to the BLDR Podcast.
Welcome back.
BLDR, it means it's about people who do stuff and make stuff, and this guy is one of the great builders we've had on the podcast.
Built a lot of stuff. Jeff Holt is his name.
Editor of Hot Bike Magazine and a bunch of old magazines from the Bonnier Group back in the day. Now doing all sorts of stuff, doing his own, kind of gone his own way. And now that everything's social media, he's the V-Twin Visionary.
He's absolutely the most tuned in person into the moto industry that I've ever talked with. And I know.
Yep, absolutely.
He knows everything that's going on, and he shed some light on that for us here.
Now, we have a few little technical audio problems throughout this episode, so just turn your volume up and enjoy. Go back a long time with this gentleman.
Since the beginning of our company, for
really,
sure.
Since the very beginning of the company. This is Jeff Holt. And you may know Jeff because he's the famed V-Twin Visionary currently, and he's basically cut his teeth, being the man that turned motorcycle journalism into an art form, kind of.
He was respectable thing.
Yeah, he was the editor-in-chief over at Hot Bike and worked in that set of bike rags for a while. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Did I nail the intro or what, dude?
I love the intro. Badass.
It is crazy to think about, though, because that was the first, the Bonnier Group was the first, big, our very first Kickstarter in 2015. It was, they're going to help us out. Great, and how did you guys how?
I just freaking reached out to Jeff, and the dude threw me a bone.
Dude, that's awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
I mean, I always have, definitely a soft spot in my heart for startup companies and, of course, American startup companies, So, I mean, It was definitely a thing. And we all know Dave's got the gift of the gab. So as soon as...
Is that what it was that won you over? So, when he emailed you and...
For 45 minutes.
Ah.
Yeah, dude, I can gab here and there, man. But talk to us a little bit about your time at Bonnier and kind of the process of the evolution of motorcycle journalism and stuff like that, and
Sure.
what it was, what it's become.
Sure. I mean, but I'll kind of start before. I worked for Source Interlink before, and that was a huge conglomerate of car and truck magazine. And I started off working on Street Chopper magazine, then Baggers magazine, then Hot Bike. Then I became the editor of all three of those kind of at different times throughout the years, and then became the editorial director of all three of those at the same time that Bonnier bought us the motorcycle division from Source Interlink. And Bonnier owned Cycle World only at the time. And then they bought us, and we became the American Motorcycle Group, which was 11 titles, all motorcycle. Right. It was really cool in theory, how cool it was. And I mean, in the beginnings of how all of it was together with Bonnier and everything was really cool. I mean, they definitely let me have a lot of freedom, and because they had no idea about custom Harleys. They only had Cycle World, which only reviewed stock Harleys.
Right.
So they kind of gave me free reign to do the magazines. And mind you, this was just as, social media was really becoming a powerhouse. And it kind of just flowered into something really cool.
What was the culture like back then? I mean, to get everybody kind of in one room is just, I can imagine that being, that could be a really special thing. I don't know if people were butting heads. What was it like over there?
It was really the Source Interlink days was really cool because so much was going on. Magazines were killing it. All the magazines, 125 pages, before the recession of 2008, and it was, social media wasn't that big then, you had MySpace and Facebook was barely starting, and we had archaic websites. So we'd have Hot Bike had 5 editors.
Right.
And Baggers had 3 editors, like, because you had to have so much time. But then, so it was really cool. You know, of course, when you're a magazine editor, I'm not going to lie, you definitely, you know, you're ego driven because your picture's in the magazine, people recognize you, blah, 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 blah. So like a lot of that clashes when you get all these guys into a room. But usually, you know, good things happen more than bad back then. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was a lot of fun, you know, getting to see the world and going places. And I was one of the guys that some of these editors didn't even have their own bikes. They just had loaner bikes. And I was buying a new bike every 90 days and building it and doing projects with it. So, I mean, I advanced pretty quickly within the ranks because I knew how to work on the bikes way better than I knew how to write on the written page.
Then I bet when magazines kind of started to when it's good, everything's good, everyone's happy and everything. But then when magazines start to kind of go away, that's when things start to kind of come to light, right? And
yeah, I mean, you kind of as you know, as social media got big and as you know, and we did good throughout the recession, you know,
2008.
So, you know, probably, you know, just when social media was getting big. And just, you know, I would say like 2003, 2004, we could start feeling it. Like editors were getting pulled off. You know, Bonnier put a lot of hope into I think a little too much hope into the motorcycle thing. I mean, this was the same group of investors and that did Field and Stream magazine. They had yacht magazines. They had magazines for people that owned islands.
Oh yeah, I was a subscriber to that.
Food magazines, like all this super crazy high end stuff. And you know, all that stuff was on, you know, based out of 2 Park Avenue in Manhattan. And then we were this satellite office out in Irvine, California. And I mean, those dudes would come and they'd be wearing suits and all this shit, and then looking at us, you know, wearing Dickies and, you know, shaved heads and tattoos, and they couldn't wrap their minds around it. But that was fine when we were selling magazines.
Yeah,
right.
But then, you know, then it got reduced to 1 or 2 editors on a magazine, which is fine if you only had to do magazines. But then you had to be in charge of social media. You had to be in charge of the website plan. You know, it got to be a 3-ring circus. And I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I was making really good money there and the bottom was falling out. I was told at one point that I was making 1/3 of the revenue of Hot Bike Magazine a year. And I knew it wasn't sustainable after that. And, you know, because Cycle World was the magazine they started out with, there was a little cliquey society within Bonnier that they were going to make sure those guys maintain their jobs. Like, none of those guys got fired. All the other magazine guys got fired. Like, there was a lot of nepotism, and they didn't really even give a shit. Like, they made it be known that those guys were always protected and yada, yada, yada. And so I knew the day was coming when they were going to pull the plug on the printed magazine. And, you know, I was out before that. And, you know, me being the kind of prickish person I can be, you know, I just kind of shook my fist at them. I said, you motherfuckers aren't going to last a year without me. And they lasted 8 months.
Sure enough.
It's 2/3, dude. That's 2/3. Dude, I mean, what do you ever think about, like, so that's something that's happening in a lot of periodicals, daily papers and stuff like that. As they get kind of weakened, these big companies come and buy up everything, but then the whole thing can fall in on itself, and that's kind of what happened to the Bonnier. At least the motorcycle set it's all gone now.
That's what's happening with everything. I mean, you know, I think the only printed motorcycle magazine left that's Harley-Davidson based in the United States is Cycle Source, and you know, that's Chris Callan and his wife and some freelancers. So they have the autonomy to do it the way they want. But you got to realize distribution channels are a whole thing, and bipads are really small. You got to realize, what a bipad is your space on a rack.
Right.
You go to 7-Eleven and the rack could be 12 feet long, or you go to, any airport and the whole place would be filled with magazines. Now they're nowhere. So, I mean, your distribution is done. I mean, when I got away from it and kind of looked back at it, even weeks and months after, I mean, if you think I'll lay this on you guys. The business model is stupid. So it worked in the 50s and 60s and 70s when you had a lot of publishing houses and entertainment wasn't being rammed up every hole that you have.
Yeah.
So you're gonna kill a tree. You're gonna process this tree, which costs a bunch of money and it's very caustic. Yeah. You're gonna put ink on it. Then you're gonna have a bunch of people slam it and glue it into a magazine. Then it gets palletized, and I'm talking warehouses full.
Sorry, you broke up a little there, Jeff. What was that? Warehouses full of what?
Warehouses full of magazines, like just palletized magazines.
Oh, yeah.
And then they get shipped out to subscribers. They get shipped out to retail locations. And magazines are heavy. Like pick up a stack of 10 magazines, or can you imagine 10,000? We would sell 80,000. We would send out 80 to 120,000 magazines.
Right.
It's super expensive to ship. And then they sit on a newsstand and only 17% of them sell. And then you destroy the rest. I mean, the business model is horrible. Like it's the most wasteful thing ever.
I remember dumpster diving behind a Hastings Media and grabbing magazines with the covers torn off that were like a month old. Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Like, why was I in the dumpster? Free magazines, dude. I mean,
you're making it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it is. And what about the marketing though? Because you got subscriptions, but then there was all the marketing that was going into it, like companies buying spreads and all that stuff.
For me, like we were doing really well, and then I turned the corner on the magazine, and it wasn't there for big fat rear tire choppers anymore, and it wasn't there. It was updated to performance base bikes, which is, the norm now.
Right.
But, when we relaunched Hot Bike with the new logo and we put a white bike on the cover that was a white Dyna on the cover that was owned by a famous skateboarder. And our boss it was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we finally got it in the can and everybody was all right with it. Super excited. It was going to come out right before Christmas. White cover, a dude straight up rocking the devil horns on the front cover. And our boss sent out this company-wide email that if that cover hits the newsstands, we are all committing mass suicide.
Wow.
And to this day, like it's known as like the cornerstone of what changed the game for performance bikes, whether it's performance baggers or performance dynas. And it's pretty funny because like I did not sleep from like Thanksgiving to Christmas barely. So like I bet the guy who was the head guy, I bet that guy my job that magazine would be accepted well. And of course it was.
So it went out with that cover. You guys stuck to your guns. Hell yeah.
For sure.
Sorry, what was that, Jeff?
Yeah, we did. It went out with that cover. It did really well. And I mean, it kind of put, definitely the watermark was a little higher and more performance based instead of, girls in bikinis and big wheel baggers and crap like that.
Yeah, man. And that was early evidence of the V-twin Visionary, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was my directive, and my whole thing was kind of. I tried to tell Bonnier like we need to get out of paper. We really need to put way more money into YouTube, and we need to do face-to-face events with people and wrap it all together. And Bonnier had some weird handshake deal with some other crazy video platform that they would get more money from if they use them instead of YouTube, like just some wacky Euro shit. And I was like, what are you guys thinking? Like, okay, yeah, you're going to get 25 more cents per view, but
nobody's going to watch it.
13 million people less are going to be watching. So, I mean, like, I was always a pain in the ass. Like, I would fight with them over how thick the cover was. I would fight over, like, it got to where every issue came out, and they would be like, oh, we can't have your matte cover, because the Hot Bike had a matte cover. It wasn't glossy.
Yeah.
Because all the other magazines were big, fat, and glossy. And I was like, let's do a matte cover. It looked really badass, but that was an extra charge. It was like an extra $1,500 or something for 120 magazines, or 120,000 magazines.
Yeah.
It was penny. But what I found out later on was Hot Bike, Baggers, and Street Chopper were doing really good. But during the recession, all the OEM, because we always relied on aftermarket people and companies like Tobacco and things like that. The magazine was comprised of a bunch of little ads. We didn't have, the
big spreads,
Suzuki ads and rear cover Yamaha ads that you could charge millions of dollars for. And so when all those OE companies dropped out of Cycle World and Motorcyclist, they didn't have any money. But they still led us, the twin guys, to believe that everybody was doing good. But they were actually siphoning our profits to keep the other magazines alive.
Ooh.
Which I was really pissed off about.
That makes sense to me because, I mean, don't get me wrong, like Cycle World, Motorcyclist, they had their place, but it was always very sterile. For my money, there wasn't tons of personality in those magazines where especially when they were talking
it's
about
like a Uline catalog, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's very much like Edmunds, Edmunds.com, just like reading specs and stuff where all the personality was coming through in the other titles.
Yeah, it just really seemed to me like, well, I mean, I would always make the distinction, like when they would bug me about using Perfect Bound instead of Staples or using that sheen on the cover. I was like, look, man, you're the guys from Cycle World and those magazines, they just give a shit about what's on the page. Like, they only want the information and the photos. They don't care.
Yeah.
Like, if it's pretty or whatever. But Harley dudes obsess about every inch of their bikes. And so that magazine, when you put it in your hands and it has a tactile feel, and we had it down, like, there was only 6 seconds of interaction that you had with a consumer when you picked up the magazine and then put it down and got your competition. Like, I'm sure we spent like $750,000 at Bonnier to figure that out. And I was like, well, then just make it all different than everybody else's and make it feel cool in somebody's hands. They'll buy it. And they could never understand, like, why do you want to spend that much money and this and that? I was like, because Harley dudes, you buy a dirt bike, dude, you don't care if it gets scratched up. It can go lay in the corner. Like, yeah, you shine it up with some pledge and you go ride it. But, like, if you get a scratch on the front fender of your bagger, you're going to lose your shit.
Yeah. Dude, where do you think, I mean, it's interesting because some of the things you're talking about hand feel, matte covers and stuff like that, and you start to see some of these private kind of, don't want to call them mom and pop magazines, but they're kind of like companies like Tobacco is, just small companies that are putting out magazines. What do you think of this new, evolution of the genre?
I love it, man. I mean, I personally have been working diligently with a publishing house right now. It's been like a 2-year project because I want to do it different.
Here, Jeff, it seems like sometimes when you put your head down, we're not hearing you very well. So, yep. There we go. That's great. Yep.
It just seems like for me that, we've been working on this project with the publishing house out of San Francisco, and it'll be print on demand, and there'll be a lot of cool things that personalize.
Here, Jeff, sorry, I gotta stop you. It seems like there's back up like 6 inches.
Boom.
And then kind of if you look down to your right, just right there is like a good mic sound. And then when you move outside of there, it's like, sounds like you're talking through a pillow.
I think it's internet connection. I don't think it's that.
I don't know what it is. Anyway.
Let's try it. It's fine.
Yeah, just go on. So you love the magazines. You were talking about what you've been working on.
Like it's pretty much, I'm trying to figure out something that's customizable for the consumer, and it's gonna work with this publishing house. It's just a matter of now I need to get back into my high art photography zone and do it that way instead of just shooting for phone and web usage. So, like all the stuff I've been shooting for the past few years isn't going to be good enough to have a high art look.
So let's back up a little bit because we kind of skipped a whole bunch of steps. And so left Bonnier. So V2 and Visionary, and so then eventually we'll come back to like what you're doing now. But connect the dots there for us. And so what came after? What did you build? And so for the past couple of years, what have you been up to?
The big thing is when I was let go from Bonnier, I was like, man, what am I going to do? I got some calls from some companies to be like their marketing guy, and I really wasn't into doing that. Like I still wanted to be into publishing or whatever you call it, media, I guess now. And so my girlfriend Maggie stressed the fact that I needed to take 6 weeks off and do absolutely nothing before I talk to anybody and get my shit together, so to speak. And a good friend of mine that I worked with at Hot Bike by the name of David Rowe, he was the guy that sold all the ads at Hot Bike. He departed a year before the demise of Hot Bike when I left. And I started talking to him, and we ended up coming together and wanting to do this. It had a different name. It was a dumb name. And then one morning I woke up at like 4 a.m. and V2 Visionary stuck in my head. And I called him and he's like, yes. And luckily, all the URLs were open. It was available. It was all available across the board. So, I mean, that's also a hurdle when you're trying to name a company, as you guys know.
Yep.
You want words that make sense together and words that people are familiar with.
Yeah.
But it needs to be able to have a URL and have an Instagram and a Facebook that's not confusing. So with that said, we did that. And I mean, that was 2 years ago, last July 4th. And I've exceeded all expectations with this brand. And it's, with doing media and, it's the same thing I'm doing or the same thing I did with Hot Bike and Baggers, but a lot different platform and a lot more freedom to do it my way.
Yeah, you're 100% in control, right? There's no one to answer to, no one to second guess you. For better or for worse, you are 100% in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I mean, luckily my partner Dave, he is the exact opposite of me. He's like college graduate, grew up in Minnesota, like a quiet guy, nice boy's regular haircut, wears glasses, and then me, total bald, tattooed freak show. And so it's kind of the yin and yang because, I mean, I'll tell you, if I didn't have him, all this money be coming in, I'd be living on some weird pontoon boat and driving a freaking Porsche or some shit, So he guards the money coming in and out, and he takes care of all the advertising that people do on the website and all this stuff. And now that we've been doing all these shows and rides, which I'll get into later, he's in charge of all the money as well. So, I mean, definitely having a guy that I would trust with my life and my bank account is essential for the kind of person we want to have.
Nice. So that leads us to today. So what do you got some cool cross-country rides going, right?
Yeah. I mean, so I started doing these performance motorcycle shows. It kind of spawned. During Hot Bike, I did FXR shows and Dyna shows, kind of where there were none. There was just big bagger shows and nothing really else. So, I separated them and we did those, and those kind of turned into, since the new Softail came out, we just called them performance bikes. So we include performance baggers and Dynas and FXRs in the new Softail. But the deal being is the shows were great. Like last year, I killed it at Sturgis. If I don't, we had the most bikes in the first. It was our first show at Sturgis last year. We had the most bikes of any bike show that they've ever had. It's kind of weird because it was off year. And then I had two more. I had one in Vegas and then one in Tennessee last year. And at the end of the Vegas show, this dude walks up to me and he's like, "Hey, we want to be part of your show next year, your Sturgis show." And I'm like, "Well, okay, who the hell are you?" And it ended up being one of the marketing guys from Harley-Davidson.
Oh.
And I kind of fell out of favor with Harley-Davidson when I got let go from Hot Bike. So they weren't knocking on my door for anything for a couple or at least 2 years. And this guy, I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, dude." And then he's like, "Please call me next week." And without asking my partner, without even thinking through, I was like, "Well, we're doing a show series next year, and there's going to be 9 of them. So keep that in mind." I had no idea where they were going to be. I was like, but I wanted to do 9 shows. And my partner Dave's like, "Let's start with 4 and work our way." I was like, "Bullshit, we're doing 9 shows." So going into this year, the show thing was huge. Like we've got a lot of good sponsors, Harley being one of them. They threw down a good chunk of change to be the presenting sponsor, and they sent me a bike to customize and all this stuff. And Daytona went off crazy. We had it in a skate park. There was bikes in the bowls. We had a big show outside of it, bands, music, DJs. Like it was the cool bike show that wasn't, necessarily over the top with being stupid with all those things. And then I left to go to Mama Tried because I'm a big supporter of that show. And so we had the show on Wednesday, and as I flew out on Thursday, we heard the COVID at Daytona, they closed everything. And I was like, "Man, that's really weird. Like they're closing Daytona. Like this shit's serious." And then when we got to Mama Tried, I helped Mark from Rusty Butcher and a couple other my friends move their booths in. And at the end, it was getting kind of weird that day, setup day. Like you could see the security kind of, I don't know, just something wasn't right. And then that night we all went to the bar to hang out, Scott's Bar Fuel, one of the partners of that show. And then we were told that they're not going to have the show due to COVID. And we were like, holy shit. And I didn't really think much of this COVID thing. I was like, okay, yeah, whatever, it's going to be 2 days out of my 9, like whatever, like we'll hit it big and we'll do it. So ended up, no, like shows came, I had to cancel them. I had to postpone them. I had to do this, I had to do that. And luckily, like I said earlier, I have a lot of good partners and sponsors that weren't like, "Hey, what are you going to do for me? The check got cashed, the parts got sent, I want all that shit back." They were like, "Hey, what could you possibly be doing? Could you help us out with our podcasts? Can you do live stuff? Can you do this? Can you do that?" Which I was doing a lot of in the beginning of the COVID stuff. I just got really burned out. I was doing a live show every night for 2 months straight.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I ended up saying, "Fuck it, man. I'm going to ride a bike across country and call it the COVID crossing."
Dude, super cool.
The first ride was born from that.
And how did that go? Or is that done? Or where are you on that one?
It was super fun. Like I made I had a friend named Will Cole. Him and his family own a few dealerships in the East, Virginia mainly, and the Carolinas. And I worked a deal with him for a bike as a sponsor. And my girlfriend Maggie and I flew in, ended up getting on the bike in Virginia, putting a backrest on it,
Yeah.
and a big saddleman seat, and riding to Georgia, where we outfitted the bike with a ton of custom stuff. And then we rode it all the way across country to California, kind of meandering. Stopped in Tennessee at my partner's house. They hung out there one night, banged it through. Stopped in Oklahoma at our friends' Brad Flags, they are a safety device. Rode there. Then we met up with John Oakes in Durango, Colorado, who runs the Four Corners Motorcycle Rally. Then in Phoenix, hung out here with Danny Motorwich and all the guys that run the shop that my dyno's in. And we went to California. I mean,
it was just you two on a motorcycle. There's no support staff, no truck or anything.
Some people would join up and hang out for a couple days. Some people would, we didn't have anybody for the whole ride, but people would show up a couple days and ride with us, take off and head back and do whatever they had to do. We had some guys that are like tour bus drivers for bands, so they were out of work, and a couple other people who worked in industries that were, not eligible for working at that time. So it was a lot of fun. And then from there, I was like, well, let's do a ride to Sturgis, and let's make it the exact opposite. Let's make it a total all-out, balls to the wall smash from Phoenix to Sturgis in 2 days, and we're actually doing that next Wednesday.
How many miles is that?
I think it's like 1,800
in 2 days. 2 days.
Yeah.
So when you get to Sturgis, Sturgis, the rally has been canceled, right?
Nope, it's all good and still going. They're putting all the social distancing into place and all the other stuff. Buffalo Chip's up and running. We're going to have our performance bike show there.
They're doing it all.
Yeah,
so with an asterisk, but
right. I remember the last I was thinking about it. I remember people asking, like, is it going to happen? Everything from baseball games to freaking the NBA had been canceled. So I guess Sturgis is the bubble, so to speak. But
it's going to happen regardless. And however it happens, like people are going to
show up.
Yeah.
You can't cancel Sturgis.
No.
People have made their plans a year in advance. They're coming.
Yeah, and we probably have 23 people joining us this time. So, I'm sure a lot of people will fall off at the pace we're going to be doing. And, I always have guys with mechanicals. We're actually going to have our Ford Transit van and trailer pacing us on it this time to make sure everybody's all right. It'll be a lot of fun, show up there, and I'm debuting a Dixon flannel. I got my own Dixon flannel this year.
Oh, congrats.
In Sturgis. And then our performance bike shows the day after that. Sturgis is going to be a whole lot of work and a whole lot of fun for me this year.
There you go. I got to ask, you being the V-Twin visionary, dude, give us some insight about where you see Harley-Davidson, what you think of the moves they're making, and how you see them coming, in the next 5-10 years, what's going on with the company?
Would you buy Harley stock or would you sell it?
Yeah, I would buy it right now. I think, I'm privy to some information that a lot of people aren't. I won't talk about that.
Right.
But, Indian and Harley have been kind of duking it out pre-COVID pretty heavily. Both those companies are like, we're going to have 10 new bikes in 10 years, and we're going to have 12 new bikes in 10 years. All that shit is off the table. Production has ceased a couple times for Harley and I think one time for Indian. Bikes are hard to find right now. The dealerships are finally getting bikes. It took a big hit. Harley's gotten rid of a lot of employees, hundreds. They've pared down their models for next year greatly. I think that they're in survival mode like any other business right now, and they've weathered the test of time. They're not for sale. They're not going to go. They're not going to be filing Chapter 13. I think that they're with their new CEO. I think they're going to have a good grip on the future. It's shaky ground right now, of course, but everything is,
What do you see the future for Harley being? We've seen in the last few years a few them. Obviously, you got the Live Wire, you have the Street Series, smaller bikes. kind of, they're definitely putting their hand out and saying, trying to be a little more inclusive across the board. And then obviously the Pan America, getting into the adventure stuff. I mean, is that throwing shit against a wall to see what sticks? Or do you feel like that's actually going to be Harley moving forward as a much more big tent operation?
I really use the analogy of it's like different branches on a tree. They have their air-cooled, chromed out big twin bikes. Then they have their electric bikes. Then now they have, the water-cooled versions. And now they have an off-road version of the water-cooled. Then they have, plug-in cycles for kids. It's kind of, I think it's really good. They need to branch out. They're still, they're still going to have that stigma of tattooed, bald dudes riding bikes with, saggy-titted fucking old ladies on the back. But, I mean, you guys know that that's not really the case anymore. It's young guys who work hard, buying Harleys, and driving a shitty pickup and having a really nice bike and living that lifestyle that way. It's like, for me, I think that Harley's really becoming in tune with the younger people finally. I think it's a bit too late. I shouldn't say too late. I think it's later than they wanted it to be.
Yeah, they could have been on it a little bit quicker.
Pretty good job.
Yeah, for sure. What about motorcycling in general? Like obviously the rallies, a lot of the rallies have been postponed. A lot of the stuff has been canceled. But after COVID and everything like that, or I should say maybe even prior to COVID, we were on the big IMS tour, and a big whisper was how the tour was smaller than it was, and that's been basically our history with the IMS tour. We've done it a couple years in a row, and people have talked about how the tour shrinking, the industry shrinking, stuff like that. What do you think about, what needs to change in motorcycling, or do we just hold the course and it just continues to be a subset of the population that is always going to gravitate toward bikes and other people aren't going to do it? Or, I don't know if you have a take on why it might be going in that direction.
I think that IMS shows poor business management. I've worked with their management for years, and a lot of them don't ride motorcycles. A lot of them, they've been doing this job for 4 or 5, 6 years, and every time you tell them something, they look at you doe-eyed like, huh? And I'm like, come on, man. Like, there's a million people out there that would love to have your job who are hyper enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Who would do every single thing, but they just don't. Yet again, it's bad hiring, and I understand they're trying to make a buck, and I understand that it's kind of hard now, and this, that, and the other, but like, it could be way more accessible. Like, they try and make it like this circuit. I know they don't want to make it a biker show because there's other things in there, but like, it's just like such a 3-ring circus now, with kids riding electric bikes in one corner and people doing this in the other corner, and they're trying to make it something for everybody. And when you do that, you don't make it good for anyone.
So the good thing though is that's not indicative of the market in general, of the industry in general. You're saying?
No, I mean, here's the thing. Like you're saying, will these places like Daytona and Sturgis, these 1 week and 2 week rallies still be around? I'm going to say probably those will be the only two that'll be more than 2 days or 3 days long. It's just a pain in the ass. People don't have that much time and or money to do that anymore. You can't take 10 days or 12 days off and go to these events. Like, take for instance, Born Free. It's 2 days. It's madness for those 2 days, and it leaves you wishing there was a third day, so you'll go back next year. If you're sitting in Daytona for 7 days, you get bored. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I'm going to skip it and I'll go back in 3 years. And I think you gotta leave these people, you gotta keep it short and power pop punk, your 45-minute record, not 2 hour Dark Side of the Moon bullshit where you're tired of it.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it. And when you think about it, a lot of guys are working guys, and they're going, "This is my vacation. If it's going to be my entire, I'm not going to burn all my vacation,
Right.
In one go. And I'd rather go. I'd go every year if I could squeeze it in on a weekend or take a day off. But like burning my vacation every year to get to this thing, or that thing, it can be a little much for some people."
Well, I mean, yeah, the climate of that was like, hey, man, I got, the market's doing really good, and I got a boat that matches my truck and my bike, and, I got divorced, fuck that lady, I'm going to go do all this shit, have all this fun. But that's not the way it's done anymore. Like, dudes are married, dudes have kids, like, people have, the divorce rate's high, but people aren't out there flossing like that anymore, whether they can or not. Like, that's just not style anymore. But you can't just have your big RV out there all the time. Like, you look like an idiot. Like, and people want to spend time with their kids and their wives. So if you can peel off and do an event for 2 or 3 days or 1 or 2 days, and then, during summer, the kids are out, I'm going to do this for myself for 3 days. And then we'll go to Wally World, with the family, in a couple of weeks before school starts. And I think I've heard that over and over and over again. And I think that's kind of where it's at now, currently.
Let me ask you this too, Jeff. It sounded a little bit like you're obviously we see at IMS the kids over riding the electric bikes. Are electric bikes a threat to motorcycling, or are electric bikes the new freaking gateway drug into the culture?
I really think, honestly, that they are going to be a huge gateway drug. Whether it's high-speed electric bikes, post Livewire,
yep,
or something like all these super badass pedal assist mountain bikes. Anybody out there that would like to send me one of those, I would definitely test it, have fun with it.
Yeah.
All over my Instagrams. But I've been really kind of following this pretty heavily because I came from the bicycle industry background. I spent 20 plus years in the bicycle industry before I became a moto journalist.
Right.
And to see these two things that I love kind of melding together and doing it in a way where it's non-gasoline powered, and people are going to hate me for saying it, but like, that's pretty cool. I've probably ridden before the Livewire came out. I was probably one of the people that rode it the most. Like, I was lucky enough to ride it in New York, and I would wake up early one year in Daytona when they're doing it, and I rode it every day for like an hour a day. Like, the concept for me is really good. I've been bugging Harley-Davidson for years to make an automatic Sportster. This will get more people on motorcycles than anything. Electric bikes that you don't have to shift, and automatic motorcycles would be killer. I mean, yeah, people are like, you're retarded. They shouldn't be riding a motorcycle if they can't shift. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, look, man, if you want more people riding motorcycles, make it easier for them.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, you talk to almost anybody, and probably nobody's more guilty than of this than the Harley crowd of being a little bit harsh on everybody's beginning bike. But if you ask almost anybody, you go, what was your first? They'll rip on a metric bike, and they'll say, nah. And then you go, what was your first bike? And it's always a Honda. It's always a Kawasaki. Nobody freaking starts on a Harley. The people who are starting on Harley that I know are women who are in their 20s and 30s who are joining and going all fucking in on biking. But if you were growing up, you started on dirt, or like I did, I got into motorcycling after college, and I was like, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to see what's up, and bought a used metric bike, and I feel like, and I loved it, and I still have those bikes, and besides my Harley stuff, so it's. I don't know why people have such a rough attitude when people are talking about. I really see these electric bikes, electric bicycles, little kid bikes. And I'm going like, if we want this industry to stick around, we got to get people hooked. And you always want something bigger and more powerful. And so I don't think the gas bikes are going anywhere. But, I think the first bike I ever rode was in college, and it was a Honda Matic 400 or whatever, the auto Honda bike. And it's something that makes you go, oh, this is really fun. And I get the steering element of it. Same thing with electric bikes right now. Once I have this, I'm going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour on an electric bike, but I really want to tour, and I don't have I can't go far enough on a charge. So now I got to get a gas bike. Yeah. We got to be a little bit forgiving of that.
I think it definitely, people don't see the big picture, man. Like they really don't. Like people live, especially right now, with social media, where you can just say stupid, dumb, or put some other negative word towards a group of people or your way of thinking on it, and then you're done. Like you can just say whatever you want to say and run away, and nobody, it doesn't matter, and that really sucks. People don't think about what the future holds for brands and life. Like
they absolutely don't. People have too many problems that it's just the next thing, it's
instant.
Well, besides getting joy, but like, how am I going to pay rent this month? How am I going to put food on the table? And like, this is the bike that I like, therefore everything else is a threat to me. And like, it's just very, very like right in front of people's faces. And so it's really hard for people to look beyond that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's really instilled in Harley riders, around Harley, everything else sucks, yada, 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 which, that's something that is the biker heritage, all those rattled t-shirts, about Hondas and Kawasaki's and all that stuff. You couldn't even print now, but all that stuff was so funny back then. And now you're like, man, that shit's just juvenile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all be, like you said, Jay, we should all be supporting new riders. We should all be working on that come up. I mean, everybody that's ever ridden a motorcycle, that feeling that you get inside after you go 25 miles an hour on anything with a motor, and you're carving those turns, and you're getting that feeling. Like there's nothing like that. And that feel doesn't escape you very easily. Like, yeah, if your life's endangered and you have issues with that, or if you crash or whatever, yeah, I can see you set that aside. But that feeling for me and you guys and everything else, like that is so far up ahead in our psyche compared to being, for me, even being killed on a motorcycle. Like, but I hate to say it, I got a kid, I got, dad still around, my sisters, I got a beautiful fucking girlfriend who I love a lot, but man, I could die on that motorcycle doing exactly what I wanted to do. Fuck it, man. Like, let's let it happen,
Yeah.
Like, that's what I want to do. Like,
with your boots on, man. Boots on.
Yeah. So what? Okay, so Harley, they're making good steps in general in the market in general. I guess what are they? What's that you're going to ask? What's like?
Well, I was just thinking like, because we're coming up on an hour. But like, what's your next big thing, or that we can pay attention to, that we can get our folks to pay attention to?
I mean, what's big for me is because of the COVID stuff, doing these rides after, the COVID crossing rides gone. You can check that hashtag. It's hashtag VTV COVID crossing. Then the other hashtag for the Sturgis Smash is hashtag VTV Sturgis Smash. And then we have one coming in October called the California Crossing. And that's going to be from San Diego to Oregon. It's going to be kind of a semi-organized ride. Anybody can come out and do it. And then that hashtag, of course, will be hashtag VTV California Crossing. But the biggest thing I've been doing is just building bikes like crazy. I think I have 3 Harley builds going on simultaneously right now.
Wow.
They're all really performance-based, big motors, big brakes, American or European suspension, 200 horsepower, naturally aspirated stuff. It's a lot of crazy one-off off stuff that a lot of people can't even wrap their heads around yet, even the performance guys. So a lot of my bike builds are going crazy, and I've got a good group of guys here in Phoenix that help me do that day to day while I'm filming them. And it's cool. I got a lot of rider profiles, different riders that I meet around the country. I have video profiles coming out on those guys. Just a lot of real cool stuff to keep people's minds off the horrible shit that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, if you ever need anything, or you need to throw some jeans on somebody or a jacket or something like that, let us know. And you guys do awesome work, great pictures and great documenting of all of this stuff. You're always doing a YouTube video or something. You got lots of stuff going on. So let us know how we can help, man.
And man, if your jeans would ever wear out, I'd need another pair. They're wearing like iron. I love those things.
Yeah, man, you got it, dude. Well, we can get you another. We have, thinking about way back when you broke the story on us and stuff, for like 2 years, all we made was one pair of jeans, like one style of jeans, dude. And then then it was the riding shirt, and then the vest, and then the McCoy jacket, and just little by little, it's been growing. But you've been really supportive of us that entire time, when kind of nobody else would even give us a sniff, dude. So again, big thank you on that, and we're always we always got your back as well, man.
I'm always around, man. Like I said, UPS man comes once a day and drops off all this cool stuff for me to test, man. I don't take that for granted, as you know. And I love it, man. So anything you got new, send it my way, and I'll get it in front of the people. It was funny, as I was packing, I pulled the riding shirt out of my closet, dude. I smiled, and what's so funny is that a day later you text me. I was like, holy shit, that's weird as hell.
Too many times, dude. Weird.
Yeah, it's awesome. I appreciate what you guys do for yourselves and for the industry, and a lot of people within the industry. I know you take care of a lot of really nice people, and get your word out that way.
Yeah, you got it, man. Well, all right, dude. We're going to sign off. That's Jeff Holt. You should follow him at V-Twin Visionary. Let me make sure I'm getting all the handles right. At V-Twin Visionary on Instagram. Jeff G. Holt on Instagram, right? Those are the two big forward-facing channels. What's your YouTube channel?
It's V-Twin Visionary.
V-Twin Visionary. Across the board, that's the main way to find him.
Yeah, vtwinvisionary.com.
Awesome, dude.
It has everything fully encompassed, all wrapped up in there. If you want to go back and see anything or whatever, it's all there.
All right. Well, listeners, Jeff's a good dude. Jeff, thanks for jumping on, and we'll get at you later, man.
Thanks, guys.
You got it, dude.
See ya.
All right, man.
Thanks,
That's
Jeff.
it. Thanks for tuning in, dude. Good to see your smiling face.
We will see you sooner than later, hopefully. Huh?
Say hi to girl for us,
man. Yeah, say hi to her. She's out there with you too.
Yeah. Go over it. Say hi, Maggie.
Attaboy.
Hey.
All right, man. Well, good luck out in AZ. I'm always looking for the next cool thing, dude. Appreciate all you do.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. Be safe.
Thanks, man.
Later.
Bye.